Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
Synctank.
How much you bet that the gold? Oh yeah. Thanks. How much you bet that the gold in Fort Knox is gone? You know what I mean? Like, and if
or there's a lot more gold than we thought that they had because they've been getting gold from all kinds of people and haven't been letting everyone know.
that was my thought too. Is like, what if there's a ton of gold, but that they're just now trying to get rid of it before it gets audited, you know, or something like that. Like it's actually been there the whole time, but now because it's like Eurydice, you know, that you're supposed to just trust, and if you don't trust, then they're going to take it. Then now this is the moment where they're like, "Well, I can't believe you don't trust us."
You have to have faith in it. It's a faith-based thing, and once you try to start proving it, then you're disproving your own faith. It's a weird paradox.
Faith is like Fort Knox, yeah. What about the 4 trillion missing in treasury, untraceable treasury payments? Do you think that any of this has to do with like how are
I want to just say, tread carefully, because the last time someone looked this deep into auditing the government, we had like a trifecta of trauma programming, right? This is basically the lead up to 2001, where it was like, oh, we'll get you those papers. We'll tell you exactly where they're at. Oh no, the papers are gone.
Are
and
you
this happened in
referring
Oklahoma.
to the Pentagon with the missing money from the Pentagon? Donald Rumsfeld, September 10th, announcing the missing money from the Pentagon. The next day, the record-keeping department of the Pentagon is annihilated. No injuries. No one got a single anything. It's just the entire records-keeping department is destroyed. That's what you're referring to?
They fight clubbed themselves, yeah.
This is funny because Reuters tries to deny this, but I mean,
really? How?
Yeah, I forget. Let me see this. Rumsfeld did not reveal the loss of 2.3 trillion. It was 4.8. No, I don't know. Like, I mean, I have the video, so that's what's really.
I saw him say it. I don't know what they're saying.
I've seen him say it, so I'm really curious what their spin is here. The Post misrepresents remarks made by Donald Rumsfeld.
How?
Our financial system are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions. While he did make these remarks the day before 9/11, it was not the first time this amount of money was brought up. What?
No. So the lie is that it wasn't the first time he said this before 9/11.
What's even happening? Sorry.
That's not true. Donald Rumsfeld for the first time did not say before 9/11.
Can you were looking at that video? Can we just look at him say it? Because
the
clip, so we know what it is that's exactly.
This is what he would call a known, right?
I'll allow it. Brett.
Get this sombrero.
I was going to say terrifying.
There could be a large cover-up going on.
And I've mused over the fact that I've read some of these things and asked what they thought.
It was the major headlines on that morning.
He's on a podium.
where the day before Donald Rumsfeld made that speech, trillions of dollars gone.
Pentagon, the day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war, not on foreign terrorists.
The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy.
He said money wasted by the military poses a serious threat.
In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death.
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed. And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the
That's what I
war
heard say the thing.
was forgotten.
My 03 budget. Estimates we cannot track
25%
there
of
it
what it
was.
already
Okay.
spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T.
Thank
That's
you. I just wanted to hear-
$8,000.
According to some estimates, we cannot track this. Then the records keeping department was what was destroyed. Let's be clear, Reuters. Like that seems kind of crazy. So nothing came of any of that.
Well, because obviously it didn't really happen the way we just saw it. I mean, obviously, we're mistaken, and Reuters knows.
Reuters.
Yeah.
Reuters.
Audit report in February 25th, 2000 showed that we were already missing this money. So while it's true information, he didn't come up with it. Like, he didn't just make it up himself. Like, what is the point of hiding that? Like, I just don't completely. And when was this article written? This was 2023 that this article
I always
came
thought
out.
it was Reuter as in goiter.
I just had a guy who works for them the other night tell me the correct pronunciation, and then I was like, "Oh, retain that," and then I lost it. But this guy's last name.
And
Reuters.
then you put the pocket watch away.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I looked at a thing earlier that talked about how you could get the dollar back to its value of 1913. Like, they could easily start collapsing dollars, and at a certain point, the dollar would be worth $1,000, right, or $1,300 today. They could do that, but the problem with that is that the cheaper the dollar is, the more likely businesses are to invest in our country. This is what Trump's been pushing, is he wants every one of these guys to build factories in America, instead of over there, wherever that is. So to do that, it has to be cheap enough to build your factories here. So it's actually like a good position that the dollar's weak for these companies, right? Like, how great did Trump make America great enough to invest in because it's cheap,
I think we need to be ultra selective of exactly what we want to manufacture, though. Like, there's an example when you talk about printers, for example, because I've been doing a lot of printing over the last couple of years. And now, even if Trump imposed a 100% tariff, which would be unheard of, right? Even 100% tariff would still be cheaper to go overseas than it would be to print in the US. So then the implication is that, okay, well, if the tariffs get high enough, then companies won't be able to afford to just keep outsourcing, so they'll build their own here. Same with the customers. But then the problem becomes that when you put your factory together, all the parts and all the supplies and the inks and the films and all the chemicals, that all also ends up coming from China regardless. So even if you were to build your entire manufacturing line, they're just decades ahead of us. And with I've lost my train of thought.
I thought this was I thought this was AOC, but I'm not convinced anymore.
That's not a rain dance camp out.
That's the one thing we can export.
Didn't China have like 100% tariff on cars, on vehicles, to America? Didn't they have a 100% tariff on vehicles? I thought
they did for a while. I don't know if they still do. Electric vehicles from China had 100% tariff. I don't know when that was
electric. I don't know.
They still end up being cheaper than typical consumer options.
Haha.
That's EVs, but I'm saying beyond EVs, they've had giant tariffs on us.
Well, we were talking about this recently too, but that the speed in which Trump is doing all this stuff means that there could be 100 tariff this week and it's gone next week, or it's 200% next week, and the amount of fluctuation is it seems very dynamic and almost too dynamic for the world to catch up. I think that Trump also realized that the infrastructure we have does not respond at the exact same sort of like refresh speed that his mind is thinking. This is no longer operating a building or operating even like a small county. like to steer this entire ship. Takes a while for it to turn.
Well, I think tariffs is always kind of a excuse. He's like, look, I'm going to put tariffs on you unless you do something else I want from you. And that's been
a strong arm.
Yeah.
I like it. I mean, I think that this is so much better than the alternatives that we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
Well, so far, I think we were talking about it last week, but it's funny as hell to watch Trudeau just like totally flip in the complete opposite direction within a matter of hours from what he announced. So he announces his position, everyone freaks out, and then it's like the same day, as far as I remember, he flipped it. So between the time of him saying, we're not going to go for this is outrageous, blah, 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 AOC takes to Twitter, loses her freaking mind about what this is going to mean for the entire future of America, Canada, dynamics. And then, like, within an hour or two of her, like, losing her shit, everything she wrote has become completely irrelevant because Trudeau says, okay, fine, we'll do the border thing that you're asking for. It's just like how quickly that happened is just like, whoa, and the media never even got the opportunity to run an article around that interim. So there is that window of time where it's just like, oh my God, we're going to war with Canada? What's going to happen? And it was like, if that was 1 day or 2 days, if that didn't happen within a day, they would have, what those headlines would have been, would have been the same thing that AOC was able to take to Twitter saying. And so, it's just crazy how quickly.
Hear me out. This is why AI journalism actually has the upper hand at a certain point. AI is going to be the only thing quick enough to put together an entire article for your AI to digest and summarize for you.
Yeah, well, there's also the bloggers are going to have a front seat at when the secretary of it's funny, we'd say we're relating to it like media, but it's like that it's a meme now. It's like I'm the media now. Like it's totally the whole thing has shifted. So not just bloggers, podcasters. I don't know. You should apply, Andreas. You could be. Sure. They're asking
around
you have like a cycling thing.
Yeah, you have to be around DC though enough, like because I don't think they're gonna fly you out to do the press, But
no, you have to get your own self out there. It's true. Yeah, the Doge is gonna make sure that no one's paying for your plane ticket.
Everyone I know that's always on the road. I mean, you would make the most sense to just be in DC every other weekend for whatever.
Not again. Right. Well, it could happen. I'll think about it. I will think
about the space that you're in now. You're a fancy place, man. Look at that. Wait, is that
where's
real?
the GoFundMe? Can we have a GoFundMe to like get Andreas in DC?
What about the Hamas 6 Israeli hostages that are on Saturday and 4 bodies returned? So this was the whole thing. Trump said that he was going to go to war, and I think Netanyahu said he was going to open the gates of hell. The gates of hell will be opened, right?
I would like to look at this particular news story on ground news. I'd be really interested to see exactly who's reporting it and what percentage.
We're on ground news. That's what I tend to do.
Oh, you're looking at ground news right now?
Yeah.
So what's the percentage here of that's so funny. I would say that and you're literally looking at ground news. What's the percentage of each here? Can you see that at the top? The interface is different than it looks on
3, 4. Yeah, I got like 4.
Where we can see the right, the center, and the left percentage wise.
19 left. There's 15 right, and then 17 center.
Oh, it's pretty balanced actually. And so I wonder how the different headlines read. Yeah. Is it just
what happens to the Bibas family? Hamas will release 6 hostages. Let's look at the extreme left one. Is there an extreme left? No, that just leans left.
Well, if you want extreme left, look at what
CNN.
No, the Daily Coast has to say.
Daily Coast.
Daily Coast.
KOS. Yeah, this is another CIA agent.
Nice. Okay. So watch Trump's secretary casually threaten Social Security. Doge, Trump. I don't see anything about the hostage.
I'm gonna report on it. But yeah. So Daily Coast right now. So one of their main writers, who's had article after article on Kennedy. He's been in court. He has a lawsuit against him for libel And if you look at the actual document from Kennedy of all the headlines of what he said and how like thoroughly debunked each thing is, there's, as far as I can tell, there's two things that are going to happen, and it's similar to what happened with Alex Jones and Fox in the past. They're either going to have to say, the Daily Kos is going to be forced to say that we're not actually a real media outlet, we're more of like a whatever entertainment thing or whatever, kind of like Fox had said in court in the past, or they're going to lose. Like, I don't know what the third option is. So all these people who are because they're 28.40% accuracy. Like, your news should be at least 40 to 60% accuracy. You know what I mean? Like, if it's your go-to news source or whatever. So a lot of people, this is like far left. They're really it's like Gawker without the Hulk Hogan type sex tapes and stuff. It's like they're
without the good parts.
Yeah, without the fun parts. You know,
it feels like more like CNN than CNN does anymore. Like,
yeah,
you know, the
totally.
closest to a hostage article is the "Why I'm a Jew Who Won't Visit Israel. Look what they've done" kind of article.
The OAN of for the left, right?
Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Andreas. Thank you for all that you do. David and Thomas too. Thank you, Britt. I appreciate it. Thank you for keeping me alive, all of you. That's very nice. I feel
happy birthday.
Yeah.
How old are you today?
I'm 3,000. I'm older than man.
We're 900 years old. Reach, look as good. You'll not.
That's how I feel. I mean, I'm so old that I want to look at other old people dying to make myself feel younger. So the Pope says he has bilateral pneumonia, which to me sounds like a political joke. You know, bilateral.
Look, my pneumonia is not partisan. It's
even coming after the Pope. I don't know. Like, what do you think about this whole thing? I kind of thought that he was gonna die this year anyway. I think this might be kind of the sign that he's gonna retire at least, right? Like, do you think? I mean, this is a big fun one. Is that the Pope's involved with the mafia, who are involved with human trafficking, and
that's it. I hate to say it. It sucks to think something like that, but look at the way that he's reacting to the current border czar and the specifics around what he's saying and what's being said back to him. The border czar, I forget that guy's name. I'm sure you guys probably know it, but he looks like he kind of reminds me of Jesse Ventura, but a little bit more, even more like, you know, like he's like, was this guy a wrestler? What's his deal? But no, he says, hey, the Vatican, they got a wall, man. He was like, you guys got a wall. You're over here telling me, like, it's like, I don't know. You don't just let anybody into the Vatican, do you? Like, come on.
That's more of like a stadium wall, though. You got to pay if you want to be able to be a looky-loo. You got to pay money to get in those walls.
Look, it's not all the looks, okay, that I'm racist against. It's just the ones that sneak into the festival for free. Those are the ones you got to watch out for. Yeah.
I mean,
do you think having a direct line to God is better for your lifeline or worse? Like, does it take?
Right, but it's long
he lose years or gain them?
Jerusalem, then he doesn't have to pay as much.
It seems shady.
The direct line to God. Sorry, never mind. It's an old Jewish joke.
I don't get it.
It's a longer joke. The joke is actually that the rabbi visits the Vatican and the Pope shows him his phone where he can talk to God, and he's like, oh, the only thing is that there's this charge, and it's like, how much is the charge? And it's an outrageous amount of money, and the rabbi's like, okay, well, talk to God, fuck it, I'll pay it. And then he talks to God, has this great conversation. He's like, wow, that was amazing. Then he calls up the Pope like a while later, and it's like, hey, and they're chatting. He's like, hey, by the way, I got one of those phones. And the Pope's like, you can't have one. Where did you get one of those phones? He's like, no. He's like, really? And he doesn't believe him. So he flies out to Jerusalem to check out the rabbi's phone. And then, you know, he goes, well, how much is it going to cost? And he goes, oh, no, it's not long distance.
I like that. That's cute. I know we could do Vietnam for a second. Vietnam's got new social media laws. Did you see this with JD Vance in Europe and how he told everyone they were like supposed to talk about security? He's like, well, the real security threat's within. You know, you need to be focusing on saving European values or our shared Western values of free speech. And now everyone's freaking out. Like this vegan Swiss lady who has the face of Darth Sidious is freaking out because the biggest threat, we've talked about this already because Germany was saying this while I was there, that the biggest threat to democracy was free speech and populism.
Right. So isn't it interesting timing that 60 Minutes, that, super objective news source now. I mean, they have a history that's very dignified, and I respect the hell out of the older reality of what 60 Minutes was able to do. But they run this special basically saying what you just said, that, they have this, very prestigious, German man representing This Is the View, and the question of free speech is, it's like, he's like, this is a huge threat, and specifically historically they're arguing that this is why the Holocaust happened, was because people had free speech, which is a really weird argument, because on one hand you had a clamping down of free speech, specifically in regards to Hitler, and how Hitler wasn't allowed to speak, and all these that's a well-documented history of that. And then as soon as he's allowed to speak and he comes to power, what does he do? But he clamps down on the free speech of all his opponents. And so on both sides of it, you see the issues around that the clamping down on free speech wasn't helping.
Yeah,
so,
it's the problem is getting rid of free speech. Yeah,
well, it's kind of genius though, because if you look at it from like a Fabian aspect, if you look at what I'm doing right now, I care what historians in 100 years from now write about it, then you can just kill all your rivals, jail all the journalists, and then make speech free for the next 2 or 3 decades, and everyone understands that, oh, it's free speech with an asterisk that like you'll get taken away in the middle of the night and no one will hear from you again. But on paper, you get to be a free speech society.
Right. I forget the woman's name from 60 Minutes, but like she, for the last 8 years, she had a blog where she basically says we need to get rid of MAGA people. Like, and she's a little vague in her language, but at the same, it's like there's all this stuff. Like she's, TDS to the max, right? But it's like she does. Yeah, there you go. There she is. But it's not objective. It's not like that historical. Like people have this kind of like, when 60 Minutes is said, like you're like, oh, 60 Minutes, because like I love 60 Minutes. One of my favorite 60 Minutes was 1976 swine flu 60 Minutes, when they put the head of the CDC on the hot seat around lying about the bait and switch that Big Pharma did in collusion with the CDC, and he's called out about it on 60 Minutes, and it is so embarrassing. It's one of the most embarrassing things you could see from an official in public health, and it was like, dude, it was the walk of shame, and I'm just like, wow, way to call out some shit, but we're not seeing the same thing from 60 Minutes. We're seeing I mean, if they had legitimate criticisms of Trump, I welcome it. I criticize the shit out of Trump. It's just like, if you're gonna do it right. Don't just fucking, excuse me, am I not supposed to swear? But yeah,
it is what it is. I think they've already suppressed us. I have a microphone. I have a shotgun microphone from the Minneapolis 60 Minutes team, basically, like that they used to shoot like everything in the 90s with. And it's a good microphone. I feel like that's the thing. They have all the right equipment. And it's
analog. You have an analog microphone.
You can't, old German style. XLR.
Why aren't you
bring it to DC with you, man?
I could be just having, but it's like weird to have a shotgun microphone designed to be like 5 feet away from me in my face.
Oh, shotgun! Excuse my ignorance. I didn't understand. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's what they use to record their interviews, because they move it back and forth and they aim it. But yeah, I don't need that all the time. And
I was saying, bring it to DC with you.
I'm not that fancy. Well, let's watch the Rubio, because Rubio, you saw the Rubio video. Rubio impressed people.
And so they don't have to agree with him, but to be angry about it, I think actually makes his point. I thought it was actually a pretty historic speech, whether you agree with him or not. I think the valid points he's making to Europe is, we are concerned.
He's talking about what Vance said at the Munich conference.
That the true values that we share, the values that bind us together with Europe, are things like free speech and democracy and our shared history in winning 2 world wars and defeating Soviet communism and the like. These are the values that we shared in common. And in that Cold War, we fought against things like censorship and oppression and so forth. And when you see backsliding and you raise that, that's a very valid concern. We can't tell them how to run their countries. He simply expressed in a speech his view of it, which a lot of people frankly share. And I thought he said a lot of things in that speech that needed to be said. And honestly, I don't know why anybody would be upset about it. People are allowed, you don't have to agree with someone's speech. I happen to agree with a lot of what he said, but you don't have to agree with someone's speech to at least appreciate the fact they have a right to say it, and that you should listen to it and see whether those criticisms are valid. I assure you The United States has come under withering criticism on many occasions from many leaders in Europe, and we don't go around throwing temper tantrums about it.
Well,
Some of us do.
in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide, and he met with the head of a political party.
Right. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, you're trying to weaponize your speech against us, and then
just like that. So you're in Germany. So she's inferring that the German Third Reich and the genocide and all of the things that happened, the burning of the books, was free speech. That it was free. I mean, it was just crazy to say in so many levels. And she's just assuming that we all accept this. We all were educated in this fact, and we all agree with this, that free speech was the biggest threat to freedom.
To conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship...
And you know that. See, and it's interesting also she's wearing this weird fascistic brown outfit, which I don't know, man. Kind of
brown
shirt. Kind of like it.
Changing the tone of it. And you know that the
censorship
was
you.
specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were...
Yeah, like first they banned child pornography, then they banned bestiality, then they started banning Oscar Wilde and Hemingway. It was a slippery slope to banning everything.
Man, this is the thing, man. It's like when people talk about what the leaders are doing, like that is a legitimate argument. Yeah, I'm more afraid of my neighbors. And like, who's that lady from The Mandalorian or whatever who lost her freaking job over a badly worded meme?
Gina Carrero.
Yeah, like we've talked about this before, but it's like if you look at that meme, like, yeah, it says it wasn't the Nazis that did this, it was people's neighbors. No, it was both. Like that could have been worded better. But like, who am I afraid of when it comes to totalitarianism? Like on one level, yeah, the government, that's crazy. The military, yeah, totally. Like no denying that. And like, who enforces when we talk about like not having freedom of speech and whatever, it tends to be like, people literally surrounding you. And nowadays on the internet, like it's weird. Like I'm as concerned about regular people as I am about the government when it comes to what they're going to enforce. Like if your boss tells you that you can't do this unless you do this, like he's the one in like paying forward what the government is propagating, right? So and the media. So like in the media too, like that's a crazy thing. So I don't know.
Well, are you guys free speech absolutionists?
Usually. I mean, I grew up in South Park, America. I felt like the most beneficial tool we had towards progress of any kind was South Park because it was so irreverent. I felt like irreverent free speech was the only way that we could actually hear, and it's an extremist point of view because you have the extremist, arrogant to a point of ignorance on the far right and the arrogance to a point of ignorance on the far left, and they're both yelling at each other, and you're showing two idiots representing those sides, not the greatest, not like it's not like a debate between the finest minds, like it's not like Bill Buckley and Noam Chomsky, or maybe it is. I mean, but it's making fun of it, and from there you're able to see, okay, well, here are the problems with both of these things. If we let this go unchecked, it will go, to a comically bad place this way, and if we let that go unchecked, it'll go to a comically bad direction that way. So what did we learn today, children? Right. And that was free speech. And it felt like even then people were complaining, right? The media in Hollywood was like, how could South Park be so irreverent to all of our values? Right. But that's what led us to a better future in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. I talked to Mormons yesterday at my house for a couple hours about just that.
Nice.
So they came by. There's the two boys this time. And one of them was Asian, and the other, and he didn't talk as much. He was more listening. He's really attuned, he's paying attention. And the other guy seemed a bit younger. He's like, wow, he's really excitable. So everything I was telling them about, talking about the Upanishads or whatever it was, so, wow! And so, yeah, they came to my house, they looked at my Zohar collection.
You're gonna get him in trouble.
Like, oh man, but no, we talked about South Park, and they brought it up. So like, because of the Book of Mormon, Trey Parker, Matt Stone. Actually, I brought up the Broadway thing, and then they brought up like, oh, South Park did the episode. We at least saw one of them had seen the episode. They
haven't seen the musical. Are Mormons allowed to see me? Yeah, of course they can see musical.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not necessarily supposed to watch that one, but they can.
They have, and they do. And so you'll have actually rows of Mormons have shown up to go see. They'll buy like multiple seats altogether.
I feel like there's more than 0 Mormons that saw the Book of Mormon and were like, I can just make shit up, and then went out into the field and used it almost like a guide.
Right. So what my friend told me was that when she saw it, I forget exactly where, but it was I saw it in London. But when she saw it before that, she said, there was Mormons there, and she asked them what they thought, and they said, well, we would be upset, but they didn't say anything that wasn't true. And so I had somebody tell me the exact same thing who was from the place where it takes place. So like it was like halfway through though, so I don't know what he thought by the end. But I went out for the cigarette break, and there's a guy who I started talking to, and he said no one told him that it takes place where he's from. Like, so the missionaries, they go out, I think it was like, probably pronounced it wrong, Mozambique or something like that. Like they go to some really poor African place, and
Uganda. They go to Uganda.
Uganda? Okay, well, he was from there.
And Trey Parker actually went to Uganda to film that, apparently. He went, he's like, I need to do a trip to Uganda. He made a trip to Uganda before he wrote that part of the musical.
To know the realities of what it is. He's being factual. So that's what the guy told me. I said, well, are you offended? And he was like, they didn't say anything that wasn't true, so I can't be offended. Like, I'm not able to. Like, I was like, wow. What a trip.
Was any of this based on an actual missionary tale about Star Wars, or was that all completely fictionalized?
Star Wars is actually about Mormons. I think we all knew that.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
They inverted it, as they do.
Pretty clearly. I mean, okay, well, we got
for a sole and only party that governed that was none. There was the people they hated, but primarily the Jews. They hated Jews.
Let's start over with the Nazi part.
Conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany.
I just want to corroborate this by saying that my dad had an aunt from Germany in World War II who was a swing kid, and the swing kids were illegal. So what they did was they listened to swing music. Well, the swing music records were banned, but then they would often, because they couldn't always be listening to swing, speak in American jive, and they would like learn what are these words, and they would even translate them, and they would try to come up with a way to upset the Hitler's youth around them by like talking in swing jive terms that were clearly from blacks and Jews, that offended them. And because the music was banned, they would wait for bombings and air raids. And when the air raid sirens were on, that's when they would play the music, because they were the military force would be distracted. So they would be trying to play music and listen and dance, swing in places where they were, and they would get arrested. And so my dad's aunt was arrested at like 17 years old and sent to the Alps, where she had to be a weather balloon girl for like the next 2 years. So like there was no free speech. There was no freedom of expression. Just, it's hard to imagine that we're teaching people this.
Stacey Lee in the comments says Footloose.
Yeah, it was like Nazi Footloose. I want to make the movie Nazi Footloose, actually. I think you're right. I think that's what it was.
Or a sole and only party that governed that country. So
wait, sorry, David, you were saying?
No. Is it Joe Biden? He's the villain in Footloose. That's how my introduction to him, when he wanted to end raves. Get rid of race.
That's not an accurate reflection of history. I also think it's wrong. Again, I go back to the point of his speech. Okay, the point of his speech was basically that there is an erosion in free speech and intolerance for opposing points of view within Europe, and that's of concern because that is eroding. It's not an erosion of your military capabilities. That's not an erosion of your economic standing. That's an erosion of the actual values that bind us together in this transatlantic union that everybody talks about. And I think allies and friends and partners that have worked together now for 80 years should be able to speak frankly to one another in open forums without being offended, insulted, or upset. And I spoke to foreign ministers from multiple...
Yeah, because that's how you stop war. If you are able to communicate with each other. Diplomacy.
Yeah, totally.
If I can say something and you can hear it, if you can say something and I can hear it, that might save us a lot of forcing each other to listen to demands at the end of a violent engagement.
Yeah, I couldn't be a free speech absolutist though, like to speak to what you asked, Thomas, because I feel similarly like that I do about drugs, that whole thing where it's like I said it before, Eric Andre, you know, because it's a no-brainer. All drugs should be legalized with the exception of salvia. There's always some exception out there, and there's a good reason for it. And you're like, when it comes to threatening someone, that's why I like it that somebody can be sued for libel. Like I was just talking about the Daily Kos. How is that distinct? Well, something's been repeated there. First of all, if you get something published, that's different than you just said it on some social media outlet or you said it to your friend out loud when in the moment. You know what I mean? Like things have to be vetted in a process. So you have to have people who are at least making some effort. There has to be some oversight that there's some degree of fact checking. And something's blatantly false and you repeat it and it's harming somebody else. It's harming their career, it's harming their life. And really,
you sound like YouTube right now. You sound like the notification I get.
Right, but the thing is that YouTube isn't really doing that. It's telling you that it's doing that, but it's not really doing that. That's why I'm saying in court, it's different than YouTube. YouTube is playing the part as though it was like court and jury, and they've got this whole system when really it's just, it doesn't even have to be a person now. It could be the fucking robot saw a combination of words and it's like, you can't talk about that. Like if you want to, you know, have a dream bleep a Chrome, you know, and you want to just like talk about it in like an intellectual way, and the YouTube censors are going to be like, no, you can't talk about that. That's not what I'm talking. That's not what I'm saying. So you see that there's a huge gulf of distinction.
I don't see a huge difference there though, because if let's say that one of those examples was like Donald Trump literally comes out and says, put, you know, cleaning supplies into yourself in order to, like, what if someone that had an actual following legitimately said that?
That's not what I'm talking about. He didn't get it published. Like he didn't have like a whole, there's no one else in steps between. Like if you publish a book, right, you have like all these steps to make sure that what you're saying is empirical data and not, you know.
I don't know if that's true. I don't know. You can self-publish.
That's the reason why, like if RFK was to be sued by Fauci for libel for his book, you know, The Real Anthony Fauci, like, you know, that they would have to go through and be like, where is the specific example and can you prove that? Like the level of scrutiny is much higher than say a freaking YouTube video or what somebody just said in the spur of the moment.
I think like, historically, yes, but in 2025, I see absolutely no difference from RFK firing up a live stream on TikTok and making a claim versus putting a book out, because we could make a claim right now and have it published on Amazon by this afternoon, and if we had a big enough following, it could become a bestseller that would get more traction than a legitimate Penguin Random House book.
And if something was in that book that really directly, like, say, destroyed somebody's life and their livelihood, and it was completely false, there should be some accountability there. I'm not against, like, that's why I say I can't be an absolutist in that way.
But to quote a Carrie, like, what is truth?
Well, that's what court is for. Like, see, this is the thing, is that court is weaponized, right? Like the courts are weaponized big time. And you have like people get it, you know, making these kind of decisions. And so that's something.
Yeah, you have a David Copperfield as your attorney and you can convince people of truth, you know, in a court, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like, if you can get the jury to agree that you just made like an elephant disappear.
Right. But at the same time, I can't go in the other extreme. Like I can't just be like, this is why I wouldn't consider myself a libertarian by some of the rules of what's considered libertarian now, because I don't want to live in the Wild West.
You know, I just watched the movie Prince of Egypt because I wanted to show Brit's kid Q, and he doesn't know some of these Bible stories still, you know, because he's like, and I like that kind of. On one hand, I'm like, you know what, be free, like know the truth on your own, like watch, like be Shrek, you know. But on the other hand, if you don't know the story of the Garden of Eden, like that's a Masonic metaphor that's very practical for so many. Like we use these as parables for so many things in our life. So I thought, hey, you should know the story of Moses because he just told me he watched Mufasa. And I thought Mufasa sounded like a terrible movie until he explained it to me. And then I realized that if Lion King's about Hamlet, then Mufasa's about Moses, like completely. Because you've got this thing that basically Scar is Ramses, he's the African Egyptian pharaoh's son, and then washed up in the flood comes Mufasa, who's an adopted baby, and he's not from Pride Rock, right? So he's essentially Jewish, and he's in a lot of ways Mufasa's Moses, and he's carrying on this tradition where they like integrate and take over the kingdom, basically, and it forces
There's
out.
also the backstory for the Penguin in Batman Returns.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's interesting. I should really pay more attention.
I feel like with the Lion King, wasn't there kind of like a Caesar, like, because there's obviously like ritualistic killing of the king in a sense, but it was like there was like Brutus is an honorable man, right? Like Scar, like that's kind of
Scar, by all measures, should have been the one to actually take over.
He's the firstborn. Yeah, everything about it.
I mean, I won't go on too much of a tangent here, but the actual result of Lion King, oh god, is that Simba is going to represent the new wave of lions, and his first order of business is to eat bugs. He wants to start eating bugs instead of eating meat. So the first thing he's going to do is completely wipe out all of his kind, which means he's sort of an unfit king.
Totally. It's well, at very least, he has a different ideology, a different law. He's following a different way of life. You know, the Swahili, even the fact that he, like, what's the first thing he does? He learns Hakuna Matata, which is Swahili. So he's learning this Arab Islam trade language, and so yeah, it's very quickly insinuated that he's with the Abrahamic lion, like Leo, like tribe of Judah, Lion of God, you know, which is not
the hyenas. They were a minority.
So the hyena,
it's like he cared about the people that were just complete outcasts. Nobody liked them, you know, and he was going to be there for him. You know,
there's a lot of questions about who God Seth is, right? And Seth is often associated with the hyena, even though it could be from a more extinct jackal that existed earlier in time. It's still associated with the hyena. So you have, I mean, pretty much the symbolism of Seth versus Aten or Ra that happens with that movie. Anyway, this was all because I wanted to talk about Prince of Egypt, because you were talking about the court. And it's interesting that a Jewish baby is raised Egyptian, because that means he doesn't find out he's Jewish until so late in his life. He probably doesn't speak Hebrew. He probably doesn't know the Hebrew law. He doesn't know like how he's supposed to eat. He only knows the Jewish law. And he has the staff, but so do the Egyptian priests. So he goes in because God tells him to take off his sandals and sees this burning bush of acacia, and like out of this psychoactive cloud, he's told
salvia, probably, but yeah,
probably salvia. I think there's something to that, right? Sage in the desert, yeah. So he burns some sage in the desert, sees some salvia, and God tells him that he will free his own people, and he goes to his brother's kingdom where he's already been. He killed a guy, right? He throws a guy off the ledge. He's whipping somebody. So they want him for that. The Pharaoh is his brother, so he's forgiven for all sins. And the first thing he says is, "Let my people go." He shows the staff and he turns it into a serpent, which is this seraph magic thing, right? That God is, but he's doing it with an Egyptian staff. And so the Egyptian priests, then all they have to do is prove that they can do the same stuff, because that's what truth is at that point, because they don't even know what truth is. They're just living in the real world, but they're wondering about mystical concepts. So these abstract concepts are like, hey, if you can make a staff into a snake, and all they have to do is like turn off the lights and do some, David Copperfield magic, and everyone sees snakes where there used to be staffs because they hide their staffs and they, release some snakes. Same thing when they sprinkle stuff in the water to make it look like there's blood in the water. So truth is something you just have to convince people in a court, like you said. And
right.
I don't know if that doesn't necessarily mean that bodes well for truth.
I almost want to agree with you, Thomas. Like, just to be clear, like I can hear your argument. I can steel man myself and hear everything that you're saying. And at the same time, experientially, there's like these places where I'm just like, I come up against like my experience week by week going to the farmer's market and what's the new headline and how ridiculous it is. Like knowing that I've been following the story, going as deep as I can and doing my homework to see what's going on. And then something gets said that's not what it is at all. And people are saying it so matter-of-factly because they read the headline, they read the article, and then I'm like, who's responsible for this? And then I get down to it, I'm like, freaking the Daily Kos is one of the worst ones. And I'm like, can somebody freaking do something about this? Because honestly, like I cannot stop this behemoth of a media outlet that's just like giving this extreme, retarded, ridiculous messaging that's totally baseless, and then I see, oh, these people are being sued. Oh my God, I hope they get what's coming to them. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then at the same time, I can see how messed up the court system is, and how the court system can be bought, and how twisted that is, and like all of these levels to it. So at the same time, like I can see your argument. And then I'm also like, my God, can somebody do something about how terrible is this? What do we got? We got a court system. Can they help? You know, what the hell? So,
well, I don't take it personal because I'm more of a contrarian than actually believing in that. Although I like the idea of free speech absolution, but also there's another aspect. When you say the daily chaos, I always call it the chaos, but the daily coast.
It is.
And it is CIA backed. But one of the other ways, it's almost like Mockingbird, where Mockingbird turned into a feedback loop where they said, oh God, we didn't realize that our own lives would start coming back and affect, and it turns into this weird. But I think now the outlets like the Daily Chaos, they're kind of like when you have to check for an underwater leak, right? One of the ways they do that is they get this ink and they just hold this ink up outside where they think a crack is, and they see if it gets sucked in, and then they go and look at all the outlets where the water goes out. And
you were
they
watching the Casa Bonita documentary with Trey Parker, weren't you?
Oh. Right.
So I mean, this is another version, another usefulness where it's not just all libel and misinformation, which it is, but I think the CIA already got their wish to saturate us in disinformation, and now outlets like this, they're trying to see, like you are, like, where did this come from? Who brought this up? Well, this is a way to actually trace it. They're on the other end. They're saying, how far did this end up? And you're the one that's like seeing the water come out on the other end and like, who put this ink in the pool? You know what I mean?
Well, I think the other thing is people liken the idea of truth to God, and that's a fair idea, is that, you know, historically religious people, Nietzsche talks about this, like we ended up in an anti-God science society through being so religious and so Christian. It was Christianity that said God is truth. So we need to be looking to find out what truth is. And because we're reacting to God is Jupiter, you know, you don't want Zeus raping people and lying all the time as your God. That's a bummer God. So you want a God that's like a good guy all the time, because that makes you feel good all the time. But truth isn't like that. Truth can be weaponized, clearly. I mean, it's just datum. Datum can be weaponized. You can know things about people. This is why people who were able to predict the weather ended up as kings in ancient times. Ocasio-Cortez, my girl, she said, if this administration believed in free speech, as you claimed, its leaders wouldn't be threatening members of Congress with criminal investigations for educating the public, and that refers to non-citizens, of their constitutional rights.
And she says constitutional rights about like this, when she like, wow, how twisted is that?
I like it.
She likes the Second Amendment, I'm hearing. She's now in favor of the Second Amendment.
It's but it's crazy to read that, because you're like, if this then this, but then there's something. It's a what do they call that? We had this in when I was in community college in a philosophy class, where they challenged us to go take. There was an assignment where they said, take a speech of a politician and see if you can find this issue where they're arguing, well, A plus B equals C, and see if one of A plus B is actually like fallacious or just non-factual, or if it's misleading in some major way, and then see how far in the speech they can build off of this, misleading premise. So like, if your premise is flawed, you could build off of it endlessly. So if she wanted to like write a book, right, she could have that, what she just said there in that quote, as the opening paragraph, and she could go on for pages and pages and pages with this as its basis. But if there's something untrue in that, like she's saying constitutional right for the public, who are we talking about? Is she talking about how people should be able to evade the actual law? Yeah. And then saying that that's your right to evade the law? Like,
you do, though. No, I agree. That's the craziest part. She's so on point, because let's be fair. The United States is a place where we have negative governance. Negative governance is an idea where the government has negative restrictions. They're withheld from the capacity to quarter soldiers in your home, right? They're compelled to have habeas corpus and a warrant before they search your papers. They can't just, you have the rights of your papers. You have all sorts of these interesting rights. The well-regulated militia is not an individual right. It's a social right that the state is going to supply weapons against itself so that the people can keep the government in check. We have different checks and balances in our government for this exact purpose. And so it's a pretty fair point. And what is it if someone has an American right versus a constitutional inalienable right? Because the founding fathers believed that the American ideology transcended any borders and would expand to be part of the entire world at some point. It's a Freemasonic experiment where everyone would be sovereigns. There would be no government over anyone at a certain point, because at a certain point you have your own autonomy. So we can say that these are privileges of the state, but that's not true. When we say they're privileges of the state, we're talking about positive governance. And America is not built on positive governance. Positive governance is what the Soviet Union promised. Right. It's what monarchies promise. Dictatorships, benevolent dictatorships and empires promise positive. They say, look, if you're part of our empire, we're going to give you free bread that we steal from colonies of ours. We're going to have monster truck shows where we run over gladiators that we've conscripted from other nations that we've conquered. And we're going to continually take other people's resources, and we're going to give you just enough of them as a privilege of being a citizen of this state, that no one else has that privilege except for citizens of that state. So you have, the privilege of the American education system, or the privilege of, these benefit contracts or whatever.
Security, welfare, eventually universal basic income would fall under that, no?
But these are not things that are necessarily designed specifically by the United States. These are all programs that started in Europe and America because of socialist Democrats in the 1890s started to facilitate further and further. And this was part of that promise even in the 1840s, because they said, Masonic Jackson Democrats, Andrew Jackson was all about removing the original central bank. And so they worked towards more sovereign citizenship. But that meant also taking property from Native Americans and saying, we're just going to give it to you if you end up there, because we're watching over that land. So more and more positive governance emerged in the United States. And now we're mixing them up. But America was never built on this idea. It was built on, hey, this government can never be powerful enough to take away your self-determination. And if it ever gets close, you need to have all of these systems in place, like end goals in a football game, like every inning, right? If the government gets a yard, you need to have a bunch of people in a trench ready to fight the government every step of the way to make sure that they don't. And it's going to probably every 20 years end up in a civil war and a revolution. That was what Thomas Jefferson thought.
That was the projection as stated, yeah.
But we're in a weird place if we're saying on one hand, hey, everywhere you go in the world, we believe in inalienable rights, the pursuit of happiness, which is not in the Constitution, it's the Declaration of Independence, but it is the premise for the American Bill of Rights. And when we look at this if we look at them at positive governance, there's a real problem here, because the idea of an inalienable right is very different than an amendment. We don't have we have very few rights in the Constitution that are written in stone. In fact, nothing is, because we have only rights that are added as amendments, which means that they are changes, right? Anything that's been added can be taken away. And so you're then believing that the government has the control over what your rights are. And that's not an American concept. The American concept is everyone has inalienable rights, regardless of what a government understands. A government might be ignorant of these facts, and we might have to fight that government. Even if
totally. Yeah, the government by the people for the people thing. And then when you listen to these people, like in Congress, like especially like through these confirmation hearings, where they're just like, I'm gonna keep shouting and I'm gonna make it look like I'm gonna give you an opportunity to respond, but as soon as you respond, I'm gonna continue to shout. And they just keep doing that over and over again. But it's like, it feels to me like there's just a complete disregard for being public servants. They do not see themselves as public servants, and they can't hide that because it's so who they are at this point that there's this entitlement that just like, if you like, I don't think that they're aware of what it looks like to a lot of citizens of the country who do view them as public servants. Like, you're working for us, right? Like, because it sure sounds like royalty type of stuff, like the way that they react, and especially to being investigated. Like, they're like above being investigated. They're like, you can't investigate me. It's like, what? Seriously? Like, for them to act that way, all it does to like a lot of people, including myself, I'm sure, is just like gives you all the more sense of like, my God, investigate that fucking person already. Excuse me. Like, look at their attitude about it. Like, it screams of guilt. You know, it makes them look more guilty. So, yeah, it's
I mean, I almost want to suggest that every time you have an incoming politician, there should just be an entire task force dedicated to uncovering all their dirt. But the problem is that you would uncover dirt on every single person you would put up there, that you would not have a pool left anymore.
Right, but the thing is like, so this is funny. I saw somebody comment on Twitter, like whatever this was 2 weeks ago or something, where they said, you do realize that Doge is going to be, inadvertently finding dirt on you guys too, referring not to me. I saw two other people interacting, and they're saying it was a lefty saying it to a righty, and he was like, they're gonna find dirt on you too in this process, and they were just like, good. They're like, good. What are you talking about? Why is that a problem? And then like, we're looking to uncover. And then I saw the meme later on where it was like, the guy is like, I don't know how to describe that. I mean, there's a name for it where he's just the Chad with the beard or whatever, and he just like leans in and he's like, good. But it was the same exact. I saw the interaction in real life, or real life. Twitter's not a real place, but I saw it there, and then I saw the meme. I was like, wait a second, this is really a conversation that's happening, like that's being memed out, But it's a phenomenon. People are like, they're going to get you too, like it's like a threat. You're like, please. Bring it. We want accountability. That's not a part. They're
not going to just find my skeletons. They're going to find yours too.
Yeah, exactly.
You should be just as concerned as I am right now.
And yeah, they're like, that's not mine. What?
Do you call him based Wojak? I think he's based Wojak.
Is that what it is?
Or is it Chad Wojak? It's Wojak, but I think it's based Wojak. Know your terms. Oh my god. I don't know, but
that's actually part of like the new sort of trivium should include, I guess, and this would fall under rhetoric. I guess it would be all three. You'd have to know the full trivium to appreciate a meme. But now in those rhetorical classes, it will be like, how can you figure out to end a conversation and present as a Wojak so that it like fits directly into people that have kind of been like pre-processed for that.
Oh my god. I think I have some. Let me see if I can pull them up. I made a few new Wojaks. Here's the trad wife Wojak.
These are AI Wojaks?
These are what I feel like I should really like. I really missed the boat on the NFT thing. I really should have forced myself to release a series of NFTs. There could have been some money there.
The downfall of NFTs and the advancements in AI generation, I think, are directly related. There's almost an exact inverse relationship between the two of those.
How so?
That I remember when NFTs first came out, I feel like I was kind of on the early wave. This was in 2019. I started working on some of them. And to be able to generate AI images, it was all pretty much StyleGAN, or maybe StyleGAN 2. But StyleGAN 2 only had a certain fidelity. You could tell that it was AI generated. If you spent enough time, there were not tools where you just go online and upload a zip file and it's like, here's your LoRa, here's your AI model that'll make everything. It took a fair amount of technical know-how in order to just make a custom model. And the more and more that became approachable to the outside world, and now anyone could do it. I don't know if it's a direct relation, but if you looked at the two charts about how easy AI image generation got, and then the NFT market overall, because that was a large portion of NFTs, weren't just the weird like crypto kitty randomized vectors where it just swaps out Mr. Potato Head features. A lot of that was also coming into like the AI and 3D generated stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that's true. I also feel like NFTs in general crashed around the time that AI art was starting to take off. I don't know if that was intentional, but
well, the cool thing about the people that did NFTs the right way, I guess, not these projects where it's like, we're going to make crypto gorillas or we're going to make crypto whatever, and it like, wizard fighting game or something. They had their moment, but there was also a different class of artists. I know a lot of them personally still, where they said, you know what, instead of spending the next 2 weeks making that Red Lobster commercial, which was an actual example, which is kind of funny in hindsight because they went bankrupt soon after, but instead of spending the next 2 to 3 weeks of my life working on this Red Lobster commercial that might give me 15-20 grand, what if I took all that time and I just made myself an NFT, and then I did that again and again and again, and I kept doing it. And in particular, this guy Beeple, who has been doing dailies for like years now. I think, I don't know how many years, but he's been doing dailies for thousands and thousands of days. And he kind of showed that, hey, if you took all that time and you invested it in yourself, you can build an audience and a following and a whole collection. So there's a certain class of NFT artists now in 2025 that have been doing this every single day for the last 5 or 6 years plus. And they don't really rely as much on just pure AI. They've got their own vision. A lot of them are doing traditional that turns into digital and like factoring that in, but they're somewhat resilient of the NFT market. Their pieces are still reliably going for $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a piece, and they can just release one-on-one, you know what I mean, and do that like every month or every couple months, and it's incredibly sustainable for them versus putting everything on like the commercial world to hire them for their skills. Because we see now too, the commercial world, they'll replace all their animators and artists and everyone. If they've got an AI tool, they can just be like, show a guy happy eating lobster, bam. If they can make that look as good, there's no reason for them to hire anyone. So in that case, NFTs never died, but it weeded out all the people that saw NFT as like a commercial commodity, like a get rich quick scheme versus, hey, here's a way that I can fully decouple myself from this corporate sort of like feedback loop. Like I can just make my own stuff.
You know, there's something not all that dissimilar, or there's something relatable to what happened with CGI in general in terms of CGI in film. So like it's come up recently in my feed. I've been seeing examples of where people are showing like old CGI from like the early 2000s, and how in certain places you can see it looks better than a lot of the CGI that we're now seeing. And it's like, because I had the impression back then that this is going to be almost exponential, where you're really not going to be able to tell the difference between like special effects CGI. Say you want to show like tentacles or something, like how convincing it would be. Like, and I guess it's a lot to do with just the treatment of the teams of who are putting these things together. Like I met one of the people who worked on Lord of the Rings, and she was describing her experience of all these people that like she was kind of like, somebody dropped out to go to New Zealand to work on Lord of the Rings. Her people, I think I've talked to you guys about this before, maybe. Her name is Bree, and she lives in LA with Michael Allen, who has Digital Debris, which is a really cool place. If you ever go to East LA, I recommend going to Digital Debris. It's a really cool gallery. There's a ton of AI focused stuff, and it's over the top awesome. But she like basically like faked it. Like she was like, she didn't feel that she was able to do this job that she was being asked to do. So if you watch Lord of the Rings, you know that, I forget the name of the character, that's like when they kill him, that she's like, the woman kills him and she's like, I am no man, because no man can kill him or whatever. That guy. So like him and his creature, like they designed that, her and 2 other people did that, made that. And she was describing like when Peter Jackson would like show up and look at what their progress was, people that her team would get really mad because he'd be like, no, try it this way, try it that way. And they're like really happy. We put all this work into this, whatever. And she was just like, screw this, I'm getting paid. But she ended up walking into the producer's office once in New Zealand and saying, you know what? I don't feel like I'm really qualified for this job. And to be honest with you. And she's like, I kind of like just like worked my way in here, and now I'm here and I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know if I can do it. And he said, I'm going to pretend you did not just say that to me. Get the freak out of my office. I don't like, just go away, do your job.
Right. Exactly.
And so, but she realized in the course of working on Lord of the Rings, this is the Two Towers, she realized that the people that she was working with were just as inadequate, if not more so than her, but their egos, they would never admit that. Whereas she was just like, she was very like, well, to be honest, but they weren't really genuine in that way. And I think
this is just imposter syndrome, but it's like you're supposed to suppress that. You're supposed to just keep lying to yourself about it even. Then at a certain point, you're like, I've been doing this for 30 years. I still feel like an imposter, but I guess by definition, you're no longer an imposter. I mean, like if everyone was Catch Me If You Can style, right? We might actually be more beneficial as a country. We have more like people doing great things because their egos were so big they couldn't fathom that they were being an imposter.
Right. So I think this is speaking to, just on a related note, I feel like there's something to be said for like government jobs, and what we're finding out about a lot of the people's relationship to their work is kind of like that. It's like they doing the full potential of what they can do, but they have this kind of entitlement and this elitism attitude despite that. Like they're, you know what I mean? Like they're just, I don't know, like projecting so much about themselves. But then it's kind of like when Musk bought Twitter and there was a question of like, can you code? And he's like, and so many people said they could, when really if they're tested on it, it turns out that they can't. And so you're like, prove it. You know, like,
well, again, the AI thing, one of the headlines I read this week was that the AI coding models for the first time are now better than like the top 4 coders in the entire world. And like we're rapidly approaching this sort of like state of synchronicity in that way. And also I wonder if AI helps with that, what you were referring to. I think it's the Roger Bannister effect. This is the first guy that ran like the sub 4-minute mile, and no one thought it was possible. They figured there was just like a certain, and now all of a sudden, as soon as he breaks the limit, a bunch of people start breaking that limit because they remove. Well, I wonder if AI can also help us do that. Like if, for example, if AI could run a 3-minute mile, does that mean now all of a sudden humans, or does there an opposite effect where you're like, oh man, I can never compete with that. I might as well not even try.
Hey, just so you know, Joe Alexander's chapter in Sync Book 2, right before mine, is all about that. And just exactly what you're saying and the implications of it, about the mile thing, where he's like, because for the longest time, they're like, this can't be beat. As soon as one person beats it, then you got 10 other people that beat that, like all in short succession. So it takes that bubble being popped before people go, oh, that's possible. And then all of a sudden, you know.
This is why we're waiting on the first person to just fly. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, seriously. AI is going to probably be the lesson that we learn from that. I think that the way it behaves and the way it runs will be something we learn from. I wanted to ask also, David, looking at Maha right now, rather, what do you think's going on with the health thing? The reason I ask, I guess, is because everyone's, in this kind of confusion about the Republicans and social services and what they think are important social services. And my thought has been, well, the Republicans created Social Security. Nixon tried to get Medicare. Nixon wanted his own health care through Social Security to take care of people. It's actually a Republican value to have social health care. We have, a move maybe or a chance to have a Maha healthcare system. Do you think that we're headed towards anything like that? Like
in Idiocracy, when the guy says to stop watering your plants with Gatorade, but to use water, and then the people freak out because there's this interim where they don't see the plants growing yet. That's what we're in for right now. So like we're not going to really see, like, as far as like the healthcare system, I don't know how much of a possibility for real progress exists until that these studies are put forward that are less biased than what we've seen in the past. But also, like, when Jay Bhattacharya is made into the head of NIH, which I hope to God follows through similarly with what we've been seeing with these other appointments, then you're going to see a cooperation take place, and not just like right now people are quitting in droves from CDC, from all these different departments. And so we're going to have to get through this difficult time before we have any possibility of really moving forward. But the stage is being set for real. So, yeah.
This is one of those interesting dynamics of politics, which I don't think anyone likes to acknowledge, but that whatever the big movements are don't really happen for another 4 to 6 years. Like after your guy is out of office, then you start to slowly see some of those long-term effects. And it's just, there's no way to get out of that weird feedback loop. We can see Trump doing these things that are the antithesis of that, like the extremist version, but even the ones that actually have lasting effect are gonna, by definition, have to go.
The night I went to get food with my family, they had plastic straws already ready to go. Like it was like, I think it was the day of the executive order, maybe it was the day after or something, but it was like instantaneously. I feel like a lot of changes are happening really, really fast this time around because there's just everything. It's like the funerals for all of these systems that they've already kind of expected. And that's maybe why the embezzlement was so bad for the last 4 years because they knew this was coming. Perhaps like some people knew that this was about to end. Maybe.
Are you going to have plastic straws in paper packaging? Or are you going to have paper straws in plastic packaging? Like where, what's it going to be?
I'm actually, if we have to take sides on this, I think I'm a bring your own straw kind of person.
Metal straws. They should provide metal straws.
No. After how many fatalities using metal straws will it take to change someone's mind on that?
How many turtles are going to have to die on the plastic straws before we go, do something about this, and have soggy straws, there was one video, right, of a turtle with a plastic straw, and that was enough for people to be like, we're doing this. So like, how many anecdotal things, like I saw a video of a guy pass out in China, in Wuhan or whatever.
Science is right. We should make straws out of turtle shell.
Yeah. And then this, that, and the other thing,
Have you ever seen I hope they make it into a movie. There's a book called Erawan by Samuel Butler before it was like a high-end grocery store. But and Erawan is just the word nowhere backwards. It's actually one of the most fascinating books I've ever read because it outlines these Asimov-style laws. And I think it might have been pre-Asimov. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but he outlines all this. But in this book, separate from the whole like AI laws of robotics stuff, they come across this utopian society. But in this society, what they do is they make getting sick illegal. So if you get sick, if you're a turtle that gets a straw up your nose, you're the one in trouble for finding yourself in that predicament, and they just kill you and they get rid of you. So now there are no more turtles with straws in their nose. And you kind of repeat this until there's no more offenders left, so that the society is free of sick people. It's free of people that make poor decisions, that don't know how to play along by the rules.
Well, there's examples where that practically does happen. So where people are punished for their own illnesses, even if they're circumstantial, even if it's just, the bad confluence of forces led them to whatever.
Sneezed on me, too bad, go to jail.
Yeah. It used to
even social medicine leads to this point naturally. So like, let's imagine that you live in a country where everyone pays for each other's social security. And your kids, are playing at school, and some other parents smoke and drink and are fat, and that statistically costs the social healthcare system more. So your kids beat up their kids, right? Like they end up being mean to that kid because they're upset at that kid because that kid's parents are costing the social security more. And this is very common. I'm using a bureaucratic version of it, but Vikings did the same. Like tribes do this. Tribes enforce regularity. Like, why can't you just do what we're all doing? And
go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm just saying you can see the problem with it, with the social, and the social care and the obligations of the society.
Another example of this too was the old crone archetype, like the old lady that was seen as a witch and that the entire town would turn on her. That was largely because no one wanted to see this old lady withering away and like constantly in pain and bitching about it and being like a drain on that society. Like, oh, who's going to have to go and help old Miss Crenshaw again this week or whatever. So after a while, if you just accuse them of witchcraft, then it was almost like a legal way, I guess, quasi-legal way to now just take her out. And what's weird is that the number of accusations about old ladies being witches immediately like went into free fall as soon as they implemented like sort of social programs. Now that the old lady that was like slowly, painfully, loudly dying constantly, now that there was a support system for her implemented by the state or by some other group, now like the immediate neighbors were no longer felt that burden to like cast these rocks at her, sometimes literally.
I've never heard it explained that way, Thomas. Thank you. That's simplistic, but feels based. The old lady Crenshaw, no one wanted to take care of her, so she must be a freaking witch. And then to relate that's a good point, Thomas. That's good.
I didn't make that up myself. There was a long book about like how that archetype of the old lit witch and like the scorned never maiden was essentially became the pariah of a community, because what it represented was a reminder of how horrible your death is going to be. Like no one's going to be there to help you, just like old lady Crenshaw and her 20 cats. and just that reminder would constantly elicit this like contempt. And the contempt was not just one neighbor. The entire town would hate this lady. So the second one person was like, I think I saw her like making a potion, everyone's already got their like torches ready to go. They're just like, let's go get her.
There's some more to it though, right? Like, I don't know. I don't want to go too hard into like Dr. Alman Hillman guy's thing, but like,
where we eat babies and trip off of it.
Well, I think, you know, you got to remember that there are women that, you know, the witches, a big part of the mythology of these witches is that they essentially sexually assault. They get you drunk and sexually assault you. Like they find young men and then they get them drunk in the woods or something like that.
Well, I've been at bars and had women, the older women try and do that for sure. They'll just buy you 10 drinks and they're just sitting there like, I live right down the street.
Nothing changes. Everything remains the same.
Super dicker.
Got to be careful out there. I don't know. I'm just saying. And I think that's a big one with the witches thing. It's like, because they're, you know, like you're a spinstress out alone in the woods and you get this Vulcan sexual rile where you like every 7-year itch or something. And then you go out and then you've got all of the drugs, the ephedra bushes, you know, everything. So you just drug a dude and give him some sort of Viagra-like medicine. And then, you know, yeah.
And wakes up in the morning in the woods.
Well, she's like supposed to be this, you know, she's supposed to be this creepy witch, though, is the thing. She's not particularly beautiful or something. You know, it's just a scary witch.
Well,
with like,
you've seen X, right? You've seen the movie X?
Which one?
Followed by Pearl and then Maxine. It was a trilogy that came out from A24. Are you hip to that?
I didn't watch it. No, I know what you're talking about.
Well, it's similar in a certain respect where it's this like older woman who's having much older woman, like she's like in her 90s or something.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
She still has, you know, sexuality going on, and her husband's just like, it'll kill me. I can't help you. So she ends up like trying to like make passes at these young people who are filming a porno. It's a play on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it turns out that the woman killing everybody is just really horny. And like, so she's just like, they don't put out, and then she just murders them. And so, yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, I did do that. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, I figure the movie's been out for long enough. You should have seen it, you know. Sorry. But, you know, can't watch all the movies, I guess.
David. No, it's okay. I mean, but there's also like 2 more of them. So, I mean, imagine you get the point of what kind of movie it is. But yeah, it sounds interesting. It sounds like a pretty relatable story.
Yeah, Maxine was my favorite because that one goes into like the, you know, like I'm thinking the Satanic Panic type era in the 80s with the one of those killers.
One of the best eras, by the way.
One of the funniest.
We could do. I wanted to say RFK's bit here. He says, "I'm not going to come in here and impose my beliefs on any of yours. Instead, we're going to work together to launch a new era of radical transparency to reverse the chronic disease epidemic in America through radical transparency." I don't know. It seems like pretty good words. I'm pretty happy with what he's planning. It sounds like.
Yeah, he's telling Rand Paul right now that these things that he's been making FOIA requests with for years, he's like, I'm going to get that to you as soon as I can. Like all of these things, it's just like Rand Paul's been like, please, for the love of God, can I just see this thing? And he's just like, oh no, I'm gonna make sure that you get that.
He's going to take our Baja Blast and our blue raspberry flavored everything away immediately, isn't he?
He's going to have exact labels on not just what these things can cause, but exactly what's
in the blueberry blast, though, and that would probably be okay, right?
No, it's just going to be called Cancerberry.
No, it's just like it's informed consent. So like that's the whole idea. So when he's talking about transparency the whole time for years and years, beyond like when he just started running for president, that's the mission is for people to have.
If blasts had methylene blue in it, it would actually dye your skin and brain blue, and you'd pee blue. I
want to take that stuff that the flamingos eat that makes their skin
shrimp.
There's no skin, feathers.
Yeah, eat krill then. You know, go to an all you can.
It's not just krill. You can get the thing that's in the krill. You can get it like on its own, and like I think it apparently has really good health benefits. I need to look into it more.
I mean, I'm into it. I would probably try that.
Spirit animal. I'm gonna see about that stuff. I forget what it's called.
A staxanthin. Stack something. Yeah, can we just start eating that and we'll all just start slowly turning red?
That's what I want to do. If you want to do it too, you're welcome to. But
it's already buying on Amazon right now.
Okay, yeah, I'm probably going to be doing that later today. Yeah.
use my promo code.
How much you bet the blue people will end up in charge of the pink people? You know, I don't think that pink people have a future. Pink people's lives are not worth living. It's the blue people that you want to be.
Pink lives do not matter.
So we talked about Israeli hostages to be freed, bodies returned. I don't know. What are you doing, Paranoid?
I wanted to shoehorn another thing in before we'll take my stuff up because I want to talk about Nazis for a second.
Okay.
We were talking about truth and libel and like free speech absolutionists and all this stuff. And that quote from Marco Rubio, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. It feels like in the right environment, this could be a very hot take, but that blaming everything on hate, that like Hitler hated the Jews and he hated the gays and he hated all these people. It almost reminds me of that same rhetoric of terrorists hate us for our freedom. Like there's more, there has to be more to it than just pure hatred, because there was like strategic like approaches to all this. And the one that makes the most sense to me is that Jews on a mass level, but look at all the other marginalized groups that he went after, every single one of them had a very practical reason for having their own communication networks that were well established outside of the government, even predating the government. Freemasons, homosexuals, Jews, all of these were groups that were persecuted enough by enough different groups and countries and political, like across the spectrum, they all had reasons to develop their own intelligence networks and their own communication lines that would sometimes travel faster than official lines of communication would. So I feel like the pragmatic version of suppressing all these groups was really to squelch out any possible intelligence networks that could outpace like the official one. And he tried to do it on such a scale that there was no longer any competition, that he basically put a plug in every single hole that could be used to kind of like pass messages.
Well, you can
speaking of plugging holes, I just wanted to bring up the Nazi gay myth. So apparently this is funny to me because, you know, Wikipedia lies about everything. So it's fun to sometimes look at like what they're trying to hide, you know, like because they're USAID money. But basically, we all know at this point that Ernst Röhm was probably butt buddies or some sort of bromance with Hitler, you know. And there's a lot of books like The Pink Swastika that talk about homosexuality in the Nazi Party and how they made, like, Goebbels had gay and lesbian schoolgirl dramas that were being released about gay Nazis. I mean, the Nazis were very progressive and similarly to today into, like, woke politics, which I find funny that that's the thing that they're trying to suppress right here. But there's, I don't know. Sorry, just because you said plugging holes. Go ahead, Thomas. What were you trying to say?
Well, let's just throw Hugo Boss in there, too. I don't know. It's never been proven that he was necessarily gay, but no one can have that great of an eye for fashion.
Oh, come on.
Fascism, they go together, right? I mean,
he was such a fashionista.
No, but if you look at Mein Kampf, it's pretty clear that coming out of World War I, there was a lot of embarrassment.
Not your Kampf, Mein Kampf.
How that played. Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf.
Your Kampf is I haven't read your Kampf. But no, it's just there's a resentment clearly of people who were successful in the midst of what was viewed by the German society as their own failures. Like, it was embarrassing and they didn't want to fucking live with that embarrassment. Like, I don't know, I'm not saying that that's what it comes down to, but a lot of Mein Kampf screams of that frustration, right? It's just like, look at where we are and look at how well we're doing once they started with the socialism programs, which this is something I was unable to debunk in that Red Ice 6-hour Hitler apologist documentary. Is when it starts out and it lists all these supposed facts, and I'm going through them. I can't debunk the part that they were very successful in these programs for society at large, that they experienced this big boon. Like, it was like they went from really not doing well after World War I to doing great. But then it seems like one of the terrible flaws in their approach was to take what they had been doing well with and just get kind of like too big for their britches, but just be like, put it all into military and put it all into science that was pseudo, right? So they just like took what was working for them and what was being a good thing with social programs, and then they're just like made their military 100% socialist and like put everything towards that, and then it was just like this massive ambition. I mean, maybe that's an oversimplification in a way, but
the biggest oversimplification there was the reference to the pseudoscience, because I would almost say that the same as the Bannister effect, the things that Germany did, which was currently pseudoscience at the time, unveiled all sorts of weird medical advancements that haven't really been reproduced.
It's true. I have to stand reflected there a bit, but when I said those words, pseudoscience, I was speaking specifically in regards to eugenics science and a lot of the outlandish things that were said regarding like when you're the measuring of the skulls and a lot of this kind of stuff, like
the phrenology stuff about like indicating criminal. Although the American origins of eugenics, I've come to understand, there was definitely a certain movement of like, if you were feeble-minded, we need to just sterilize you and your family. But there was also, maybe in my bias of looking this up, but there was also a sense of I can't risk my great grandkids. I won't be around to like help them out, and I can't risk them breeding with someone that has some genetic recessive deficiency that will then end my familial line. And the best way to do this is just eradicate anyone that has cancer or dementia or schizophrenia or any of these things that can happen later on in life. If you just kill them all, then you can make sure that your great grandkids don't fall even. And one of the good examples of this is Alexander Graham Bell. His wife was deaf, and they both believed in eugenics to weed out deaf people. Even though he ran a school for the deaf, he was like, we need to make sure there's no more Helen Kellers, and the most like just thing we can do, the most humane thing, is to just breed them out of existence. So there was, and I don't even know if that would be like the pseudoscience. The pseudoscience version would be phrenology. It would be like, oh, because you got a slightly big, jawbone, you're going to kill someone one day. Let's go ahead and like sterilize you.
Right, but there's the sterilization, and that's happening now, by the way. And apparently, it's okay to acknowledge that now. I've been told, because we weren't allowed to talk about it for a while. But yeah, children are being sterilized. Things are happening that are just absolutely batshit that feel Nazi-esque in that way. But it's not. People had different, like in America, we've discussed this before, eugenics in America, and how a lot of poor people were literally being sterilized because they were viewing, if you were poor, that this spoke something about your intelligence and your genes and blah, blah, blah.
And also, just to throw in though, they use the carrot more often than the stick in American eugenics. So if you were poor, they were like, we need to get rid of your poor people genes. Here's $200. And a lot of poor people will be like, well, hell, that's $200.
Right, and they couldn't afford Levi's, so yeah. Sorry. What do we got?
I wanted to point out Mocked in Uniform, which is like that cool Nazi lesbian schoolgirl movie, and it's stunning and erotic and important cinema, says somebody. But basically, it's a story about a schoolgirl that leaves her family, goes to an all-girls school, ends up making out. It's like one of the most passionate lesbian kisses of all time. This is totally approved by Goebbels. So there's something interesting to me about that there's just such a gay quality to Nazi culture. And if the propaganda was looking at, encouraging gays to be part of government, part of society, what was that saying at that point? Or was it because they wanted them not to breed? They're like, well, the more gays there are, the less breeding, or who knows exactly what the deal is. But I think it makes more sense if they were gay.
Everyone could see Sam Rockwell was gay in Jojo Rabbit. I know it's a comedy fiction, but I believe that was probably a real phenomenon, where it's like, it's so obvious, but it's just like, hey, this isn't something that we're gonna, we're in Rome,
No, they're making movies about it. So they're showing like healthy gay relationships, basically. I don't know how healthy it is to
do we want to go over Budweiser's history with gay advertising again, or no? We've already done that in the past.
Fair. I know. I just feel, maybe I'm wrong to say it, but it feels like Germany was far more gay forward than others were in the 30s, right?
I would say it still is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
goose stepping itself just feels very, very flamboyant to me. I mean,
and if we're looking at our society and how, you know, is there a connection between the queer culture and the Antifa and the woke culture? I think there might be, you know, maybe not with being queer, but with the culture itself.
Yeah, so I'm wondering about this. So I used to spend a lot of time in the Castro. My ex-girlfriend, she lived directly across the street from the Castro Theater, and I used to go there every weekend for over a year. And something that was really frustrating for me in the Castro was that no one would give me a haircut. There was like and somewhere in there barbershops. I went to every single barbershop in the entire Castro. No one would cut my hair. Why would they cut my hair? Because on the wall of every barbershop is the from the 50s. These are the haircuts that we do. So like it's all 50s haircuts. They wouldn't like, I'm like, I just need a trim. Like you see, I have hippie hair. I'm like, dude, I'm in San Francisco. I can't get my hippie haircut, like for real. And no one would do it. And I tried even to sneak into, I found one guy, he said, oh, I know this other guy. I name dropped trying to get in. He was like, oh, you think you know so-and-so? He's like, I'm going to give him a call. They like, literally like, it was like, I felt discriminated against. And you know what? But the thing is that you got to understand, like, or you don't have to, but I'm telling you. And I wonder what's happening with the Castro now in terms of this whole trip, because it was LGB with the occasional transvestite, and they would refer to themselves as transvestites. I'm talking about when I spent time in the Castro before there was this cultural shift that happened.
Yeah, it was a great time to be alive.
This movement, and so like I was like it was a thing where I was like, what is their kind of shared ideological thing? They wanted to reclaim the 50s. It's clear as day. They wanted to live in the 50s, but without the restrictions that existed for them in the 50s. It was like they're forever in this like recursive thing where it's like, we want to have that thing that we were denied. Give us the 50s aesthetic with freedom to be ourselves. And
yeah, we all want to be trad wives.
Yeah, well, you'd see it, like it's hard to put it into words exactly, but it's a 50s aesthetic that exists in the Castro. I don't know what it is now. And so like, and the other thing is that the transvestites who would go to Orphan Andy's, the like popular diner at one end of the Castro, I used to go there all the time. They would if somebody made a crack at them, which would happen because there is tension, not just with like gay men and lesbians. There's not as many lesbians. There's a lot of gay men in the Castro. It's like kind of like it's, you know, if somebody made a crack at a transvestite, the amount of wit and like just like intense, like they were so freaking funny in the way that they would react to them, the comebacks that they would have, like they were just, and like my impression of transvestites is always like, these are like the strongest of the, like they can take a joke and they'll one up them every time with the joke. And so, but this is the thing, is that I got really confused after that when I would see like online and stuff, I'd see these really overly sensitive trans people where they're like, oh my God, don't say that, don't do this, like this extreme sensitivity. And I was like, wait, that's not what I was used to. And then I'm like, oh no, two different worlds, two different things. The transvestites that would the queens that would go around. Yeah. So like my ex-girlfriend, her apartment was all mirrors, the whole thing. It was mirrors everywhere. If you looked out her window, it directly faced the pride flag of the Castro. They positioned the flag in the Castro where it is because of her apartment, because her apartment, before she moved into it, they have a royalty system for the queens in the Castro that goes way back. So they literally, like, the top queen, like the queen of the queens, lived in that apartment for years and years and years. I think like 30 years or something. And so there's just like this, you know, but their reality of like what they existed within, and also the sense of community. And so that was another thing. I was like, where does the sensitivity come from? And I was like, they don't feel connected. They don't feel connected to their community. And that's a problem. Like what we saw with, like, you know, with the COVID hysteria of like, you know, 2 weeks to flatten your face. It was like everybody got more and more distant from each other. And that, you know, there's no real community. There's a fake sense of community in a lot of this. I'm not saying across the board, but it's a problem, like, because people feel freaking alone and they have to deal with the different feelings that come with that. So I don't know, just saying, there's like one world and then there was another world and they don't have much meaning in the middle.
Speaking of queer culture, oh wait, no, go ahead.
I think every city should have a certain district where you can go and get roasted by transsexuals at any point, or transvestites.
Yeah.
But I don't know who has the best Yo Mama jokes.
Shriners. So anyway, speaking of the queer culture, Elon Musk now has 13 children with 4 different women. Ashley Sinclair is the alleged woman who says that she has some anonymous kid with him. And the joke's been that this is the craziest thing about this is that Elon Musk has had sex 13 times. However, that's not necessarily true, because if you grok it, you can find how many of his children were IVF, in vitro fertilized, and at least 8 of his children, right? So with Justine Wilson, 5 children, 2 twins, Griffin Xavier, and the triplets Kai, Saxon, and Damien. With Grimes, at least X allegedly, although Grimes is now claiming that Sam Altman is the true father of the kid, although who knows what's real. But she says she has a DNA test to prove it. And then Siobhan Zillis, 2 sets of twins. So for the most part, he's having IVF children. What do you think about that? I don't know. Just
efficient.
Yeah, I was confused about what was going on with Michelle Obama, because people were like, show me one picture of her pregnant and all this stuff. And then I was able to find a BBC article saying that she had her child with IVF. But my question is, was it even her? Was it a surrogate? Because they weren't clear on that.
Have you seen their
Valentine's
Day photo? This is their most recent Valentine's Day photo.
See, those are 2 handsome men. I support them in the rest of their relationship.
So what do you think? Do you think he's got a thing going with Jennifer Aniston? Is that real, or is that just tabloid stuff, bullshit? What is it?
Michael or Barack?
Barack. You didn't hear this?
No.
Barack Obama's apparently been having an affair with Jennifer Aniston, and their marriage is on the rocks.
It's good to be the king.
I don't know if it's true. Yeah.
I feel like probably not true. I mean, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be too surprised. She seems pretty trans herself. Like, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be too surprised if he's just like into that. But I don't know. I never heard about it yet. I thought the real deal was like, you know, he's dealing with the fact that she's going through menopause or something with like the changing hormone treatment, and that this new government is happening. And so she was just like, I'm not going to even show up at the event at the inauguration if I can't be a woman or something. I don't know.
I think it's crazy how the Trump version of having a transparent scenario, and like I guess
transparent.
Yeah, 2 totally different definitions of the same word. Also, this one came up. This was like a Twitter clapback, and it threw me for a loop. And I'm sure that Andreas has brought this up before, and I was just still trying to digest whatever he said like 20 minutes before this. But if you look into Elon Musk's dad, who is also like a very odd person, that he's had kids with a whole bunch of different women, including one of his stepdaughter, his 4-year-old stepdaughter that he raised from a child.
When they had kids together, yeah. But
ends up having kids with her. So now, but he was on record basically saying that we're here to make, to reproduce, and that is like his sole focus. And it would be odd for Elon Musk to not follow in those footsteps, even if he didn't want to. He would kind of have to, because this is the stock that he comes from. Yeah, this is a wild story. I was reading this like, there's no way that's true, and I look it up, and not only is it true, but he's like, yeah.
35 years old, daughter of his second wife.
Is it true that his father confirmed that he named Elon after that Werner von Braun novel, where the main character, or there is a character, Elon, who is colonizing Mars?
I don't know. Wait, I was reading this Space Ghost 444 says, look up Happy Rockefeller. It was the Vice President Nelson Rockefeller's wife. You can tell more when she's older. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, Happy. What a cool name for somebody. My name is Happy. I mean, that is a drag queen of a name. Happy. I don't know. I don't want to be a complete...
I don't know. I people sometimes get. I don't know about this. They might be totally accurate, but I see a lot of like these like threads where they're just like, everyone's a man and here's the evidence, and then they're showing like basically like, that that bone that exists at the crowd. They're like, you know, if there's anything protruding at all, they're like, it's a man. And I'm like, man, you guys don't know female anatomy.
It looks like Robert De Niro. I don't know.
Oh, that does kind of look like a dude. That might be a dude.
He does wear high heels,
bro. Yeah, I mean,
well, you know, yeah,
could be Slavic. You never know.
I don't know about Jennifer Aniston. I know that she had the most convincing role in Mac and Me, and that you know, she's pretty good in Leprechaun.
She was okay. She was okay in the live television sitcom, like what's it called, the episodic version of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She was the sister for that before her nose job, right? I think that was cool. But wait, you had said something about space race, and I was totally distracted by Happy Rockefeller.
If Elon's actually named after the Werner von Braun book.
Oh, yeah. So I think first off, Elon already feels like a Superman style name. It's like Kal-El, you know.
What I was asking specifically was, is it true that his father confirmed that that's what he was named after? Because I came across that claim made recently, and I haven't gone to the lengths to fact check to see if I can see his father actually saying that. But that was the story I heard.
I don't think so. Let's see, what's it called? The Werner von Braun book. I don't think so, because it's not that there's anyone named Elon in the book. It's that it's a title of people who run Mars.
Oh, so, is that right?
Yeah, it's like the governor or the captain.
I haven't read it. Did you read it?
No, I haven't read it yet.
Oh,
okay.
But
I've checked that a few times and heard that that's the thing.
Is it true that Werner von Braun has a quote talking about what is essentially like Project Blue Book, that or Blue Beam rather, that an alien invasion is inevitable in the future and will be fake as hell?
Yeah, something like that. I don't remember the exact quote, but yeah, he does say essentially that we're gonna, not necessarily that we would do it, but that it would happen. And so it's something someone has to be very careful of. Like, as technology gets to that point, it'll be so easy to do psychological operations on people. But that's before, you know, that becomes the normative line of thinking. Like, he's saying that in the 60s or like late 60s.
I think it's the 70s. If it is a real quote, it was claimed that it was from the 70s.
71 or something. It's like earlier in the 70s or late 60s. So it's like by the time that the late 70s is happening, that's totally taken for granted, because Michael Aquino's got a book on the subject, and it's mentioned a lot in Technotronic Age by Brzezinski.
Did you guys see that? So this is weird, because so we were talking about this on the show a while ago, where this man had made this claim, who apparently predicted before Joe Rogan was a big name that he would be interviewing Donald Trump at this particular time or whatever. This was something that was predicted, and the same guy who predicted that, and it came to be, also predicted this UFO incident that would happen. What did he say? Within like a month of this or something, a certain amount of days, that there would be this interaction between us and UFOs. Remember this? You know what I'm talking about? Okay, so at that time when we had a show, we had an episode where we were talking about, this is the day that this is supposed to happen, and then we're looking for, is there any UFO stuff? And then sure enough, like around that period, we had on the East Coast, New Jersey, all these drone stuff, whatever. And then, like, one of the first things after Trump was inaugurated, they were like, the press is like asking about it. He says, oh yeah, well, be sure to look into that, get you right back to you on that. Well, he did, and then who knows what's what, but what he said was, yeah, they were ours, it turns out, you know, like they were like both private citizens and, you know, whatever, military, whatever.
Yeah, this has come up before. There's zero incentive for anyone to be like, hey, that was me, because like there's no one's going to come and like pat you on the back or give you funding because you freaked everyone out and made them think that there was UFOs.
Right, but my point is that didn't he, I mean, maybe there's another explanation, but it just looks like just straight up that he admitted it was a psyop. Like, that was a psyop. But he could have did that because he wasn't in charge, right? So he's just like, what were they doing?
They're normalizing the
psyop. Is it as simple as that they just didn't want people to talk about whatever they were talking about at that moment? That they wanted them to have something else to focus on? Is that outlandish, or I don't know?
Maybe. I think that also Iran has something to do with it, right? Like there's the more effort we put in. We talked about this before, like Biden not having control over the army, freeing or surrendering Afghanistan meant that all of these CIA controlled and created ISIS and ISIL, you know, Al Qaeda like military groups, that they could have all of the weaponry and we wouldn't have to worry about the U.S. military anymore. And I think that that's happened a lot with Iran, where there's less and less like the less and less Israel power working with the Democrats or something, or whatever it is with the deep state.
I can't figure out how they can manage with that, with those contradictions. It's really bizarre. Like the left position now is not.
Well, they're not getting. It must be that they're not getting Zionist money. Like, what else is it? Like, it seems like if they used to be getting Zionist money, they were supporting Israel, and now they're supporting Palestine, which is like it's more than that. It's the idea of like it's the
because
ISIS.
It can't be nuanced because nuance works against their programming, conditioning, whatever they're trying to do. But it looks like they sent out contradictory lines, like Bernaysian style. They like engineered what they wanted for the universities, but then they're like, oh, now we need to take this position to appease these people over here. But we've already done that. So they basically just completely like shot themselves in the foot, basically, is what it looks like. It's like there was no true organized like approach. Like, how are we going to handle this in terms of the narrative that's going to be a blanket narrative? Like they would, and that's something that they've already been doing in all these other areas. Cause you're like, you can't even argue anymore that the left is like anti-war. Like, cause there's all these places where they seem to keep wanting to perpetuate. And also this like weird thing where you want to, in order to prove a point, you're wanting the worst possible thing to happen. So you can say, see, I told you so. Because it's happening with the other side. And that's
one side has to be the ones welcoming Palestinians into their country. Yeah, there might be something to that too, you know.
Well, Jordan and I mean, Jordan would be the thing. I think actually that was what Trump was suggesting directly with this beachfront property situation, rebuilding. Like same thing with Ukraine. It's not that dissimilar, right? BlackRock, was it $45 billion or something? Not just them, but there's this like all this investment to rebuild Ukraine, the parts of Ukraine that were destroyed. And so similar things are happening with Gaza, but then also, yeah, Syria and Egypt. The whole time there was a point where like Egypt had opened up a bridge to invite Palestinians over, and then they closed it. Like it was like, oh, come on, never mind. And so, because they can't handle that, like they don't want that. No one wants that. I've said this before, but yeah, the Palestinians are getting screwed from all fronts, surrounding everything. So yeah, I don't know. It'd be nice to see that work out somehow. But
the future map of the world is mostly coastlines, which seems.
Oh, is this from Agenda 21? Is this what is this?
Gordon Michael Scallion's future map of the world.
Okay,
we could still make it work.
That looks kind of beautiful. Like, I mean, are some of these places going to be more tropical? Like, is you know?
I would imagine all these places will have canals and things like that. Hopefully,
why does it look like flesh?
There might be a problem that salt, like water. You know, like a lot of these coastlines, like Mexico, for instance, they become desert because the water, the freshwater vapors pulled off into the ocean. So a place for the reservoir to be, it might be that these places just turn into sand dunes and desert, which wouldn't be great. You know, U.S.-Russia peace initiative for Ukraine. Do you have any thoughts on this? I mean, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. He was elected on a peace ticket. I was told by somebody today when I kind of snarkily responded to somebody that you know, posing the question, at which point will you consider Zelensky a dictator if he doesn't step down or have, you know, if there's no election allowed in Ukraine? And somebody's response to that was that, well, they're a war-torn country, so to have a fair and organized election is not really possible. So, which to me also kind of screams of 1984, where they're like, we're always at war, and that allows the dictatorship to endure. So, and I did pose the question, I was like, at which point will you say that he's, you know, he is a dictator? But if it's a perpetual war that's ongoing. See, the thing that gets me too is I'm just like, Ukraine and Russia are not dissimilar. Like they're so similar in so many fundamental ways. Like I that's why I can't get down with the Avatar projection or like Dances with Wolves. Like versus the oppressor. It's all Karpman's triangle of drama triangle, you know, where you have to have an oppressor, the oppressed, and the ally, and there's no other anything. It's just, this is all it is, and then it just keeps on perpetuating that way, and the allies tend to be the biggest troublemakers. So I don't really know, like, did I answer anything? I don't even know.
No, it's fair. I think there's definitely some differences, you know, and they're not all good or bad. Like Russia has more of a nationalist, purposeful goal of existing right now, and I think that's why they justify losing millions of their. I mean, they're like, it's genocide. Like they're losing millions of their citizens in this war. Ukraine also is sacrificing out of a nationalistic patriotism, but it's more for what they think of as a pursuit to become something rather than to maintain what they've been, you know. And that means they're willing to trade a lot. They're like willing to trade who they are, what their resources are. It's going to be kind of the end of, I mean, it's so clearly the worst case scenario we've said since the beginning for Ukraine, because either they become part of Russia or they become part of NATO in the West, or not really NATO, but some puppet state of the West, right? And so, I mean, Trump's kind of already recognized that that's not practical, and it's probably more likely that Ukraine's ending up part of Russia.
Isn't it like Money Pit with Tom Hanks for us?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like, because I just saw him the other day. He's asking for how many more billions? It was like, I need $25 billion more dollars or something. It's like, there was a bit from Robin Williams about that phenomenon way back where he was like describing like the country asking for the money being like a junkie, you know, they're like, God, just get me the, you know, come on, help me out, no. I can't do it. But yeah, no, it's just it's like a crazy investment that I guess it's going to have return, but it's not going to be the return that it's being advertised. Like the advertising return is peace and prosperity and whatever, but it seems like the return is just a financial return for people with this incentive to invest, who are investing.
Does Money Pit start with the like rabbis selling the house to them and then at the end buying the house back to them from them for $1? Because that's what the Ukraine is. You know?
Wow. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just there's well, it's crazy too. It's the Nazi thing where people are like talking about the Nazis, and like I asked my rabbi about it early on in this.
You mean the Ukrainians?
Part of the conflict, and he was just like, I was like, is it true that there's lots of Nazis in Ukraine? He's like, well, yeah. It was like there used to be headlines about it from BBC and all the major papers, but apparently that got completely memory hold because now it's treated as just like not a thing, you know, these like Nazi battalion things. But then there's also this weird thing where people are like treating it that when they talk about like, you know, the Russia thing with Putin, like, is Putin a Nazi? Like, because there seems like there keeps going back and forth with this Nazi, he's a Putin lover, talking about Trump, Putin, like not just him, but his whole, you know, collective. And like, I'm like, they're all, Tulsi Gabbard is like, just, you know, she's working for Putin, but she's also a Nazi because all these people are Nazis. And I'm like, didn't Russia fight and die killing Nazis? Like, didn't they have more sacrifice than any other country in the world as far as fighting the Nazis go? Is it just all the same? I don't even know.
Yeah,
I'm like,
make up your mind. Therefore, people, it's weird. Like they're for all sorts of radical expressions of self expression and freedom of speech, as long as it's in an abstract sense and in another country that they're not in. You know, it's like they're like, we're so supportive of, you know, ISIS existing and Al Qaeda. We really need to listen to what Al Qaeda has to say. Right. But then they're like, oh, how dare these kids in America play video games that have female characters or, you know, male characters as the primary character. Right. Like, it's really weird. If it's in their house, you know, if it's in their neighborhood, it's like this weird kind of nanny state thing right around you. But then you're like, I don't need to be good to my kids because I already gave at the office, you know, kind of a thing.
Right, right.
Or I don't know, maybe.
Relatively related note that just, you know, gays for Palestine, you know, it's just like, I don't know how that works for people, but it does somehow. Strange.
Pretty much. I don't know. Caitlyn Jenner says that she prefers female pronouns, but she respects others' rights to dress her how they feel. Because there was this thing where they were like talking about,
Wait, what's the story there? She ran over somebody. I don't. What is the story? It wasn't an accident. Is that?
I think it was an accident. She ran over
it was an
somebody.
accident. It was like a Matthew Broderick style.
It was like at that coast place in Hollywood, towards Malibu. Like you come down off Sunset and you take that right. It's like, I don't know if you've done that a lot in your life, but she like ran into somebody. I think she ran into some little car. Is that the deal in her Hummer? I think
she was Woman of the Year at one point. Is that Time? She was Times Woman of the Year. So there's a lot of women out there in the world, right? Because that's global, right? They're saying of all the women in the world, the best woman, the Woman of the Year was a man. Like is that happened more since then? Even I think they're just fascinating.
Well, men are just really good at winning awards. I think because they care more to do it or something. I don't know.
Very competitive, yeah.
Men are very competitive. They didn't foresee that. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting.
According also to this, Elon Musk said he did name Elon after the character from Mars Project.
I mean, he'd be the one to confirm it.
But the book was written, I don't know, but the book was written in 1948, wasn't published in English until 1953, and the full novel wasn't available until 2006. So it's hard to understand when or how he would have had a copy of it.
He's a huge fan. He was a huge fan. That's all it is. Werner von Braun?
Yeah,
his dad. Yeah, they probably knew each other. Probably knew the guy. Right?
Is it possible that Errol met Werner?
I mean, if you watch Disney, then yeah.
It's unlikely that they met. Time frame, access to circles. There's no mention. It's possible. Maybe they had some correspondence.
Can you ask it if Oppenheimer knew Jack Parsons while you're at it? Because I've been meaning to find that out. Is it going to also say it's highly unlikely?
I'm sorry, Dave.
I mean, they're close to each other in location. We're in Pasadena. So
that would make sense. But it's a little early, right? I think.
For this one. You're not quite ready for this.
Now it's frozen.
Yeah, it doesn't want to answer that shit. Excuse me.
Let's try that again.
I'm the only one swearing. I need to cut that out.
You can't use Grok. Maybe Grok will not let you look into this.
Let's see here. Come on, searching. There's no conclusive evidence that Oppenheimer knew personally, although both were significant figures. Here are a few points to consider. Oppenheimer was based in a place like Berkeley, later Los Alamos. Parsons worked mainly in Pasadena. Their professional environments didn't naturally intersect. Different fields.
Barely different fields.
Public records. No mention. Cultural security context during the time, especially the heightened security measures around Manhattan Project. Interaction between different scientific communities might have been limited due to confidentiality and security concerns. It's possible.
Like dots on Reddit.
Maybe.
Dudes are shared, whatever.
Yeah. It's
hard to imagine, but this is the thing, people, why would that be publicized? If they did meet, why would they, want anybody to even know that, I mean,
True.
I don't know. I mean, Oppenheimer went to that crazy sex party orgy, and he didn't necessarily want that in the papers,
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, it's a perfect time to hide what's going on, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, Paranoid American. Let's look at some of the stuff you've been doing recently. Let's go to the Satanic Panic.
There's so many to pick from, right? There's so damn many.
Satanic Panic game is the one I'm kind of looking forward to right now.
This one's got, look at that, two people away. We can do 2 people watching this right now can bring us to 200. Gotcha. And I found that 200 is usually the magic number when I can launch a project. So yeah, this one actually just had a really long conversation with Jamie Hanshaw about the 7th victim. We brought up the whole Dakota building thing again. Every person that learns that the 7th victim was focused on the Dakota building blows their minds, because the 7th victim is a very monumental sort of piece of cinematic history, specifically not just with RKO Films, but also that one of the writers was the assistant researcher to Aldous Huxley, and I think that Aldous Huxley is like the linchpin in everything we talk about: Synctank related, conspiracy, occultism, psychedelics. It all comes directly back to Aldous Huxley at some point. So there would be no 7th victim without Aldous Huxley. I would make that pretty strong argument, and there'd be no Psycho without that. There might not even be an Alfred Hitchcock without 7th victim, because the 7th victim was also co-produced by a guy named Val Lewton. I think that was his name. And his basic approach was that he was trying to work and battle against Universal's monsters, right? They came out with all these classic monsters and Frankenstein and the Mummy and the Wolfman, and RKO was trying to basically ride that same wave. But Val Lewton was like, no, I'm not doing that. If I ever show a monster, it's going to be off screen. So for example, you would see like a knife coming at someone, but then he would cut and then you would see blood coming out from under a door panel or something. Like, this was his vision, because he truly believed that the scariest parts of anyone watching a movie is something that you're going to think of. Like, the thing that's going on in your head is going to be way scarier than anything that you could actually put in front of the camera. Anyways, this whole premise is just shows how important the seventh victim is. So important that it inspired this entire game, this entire visual novel, where I take all the influence of Satanism in the 1930s, even the Paladists, which were what were claimed to be this high elite society, which really came from Leo Taxil. So then it gets into like early 19th century Freemasonry, Baphomet worship, Manly Palmer Hall, occult worship. So all of this is wrapped up in this one game that I've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years. And it's gonna come out any day. Hold your breath.
That's awesome.
This is exciting. Oh,
mentioned seventh victim. Cyanide Pilled in the comments brought up the seventh victim earlier in the comments on the side. I saw him.
It's honestly, it's one of the. It's not the most entertaining movie I've ever seen, but by far, it's actually a little bit boring by 2025 standards. And I also don't really like Citizen Kane either, so hold that against me. But the seventh victim does represent a milestone. It's like a mile marker in not just horror, but in American cinema.
I'm totally going to hold that against you.
That's fine. I don't care. Rosebud's stupid.
It's just, Rosebud's the sled is stupid. I mean, come on, it was this child. What the fuck? No. It's just the thing is that you can't appreciate Citizen Kane without the context of that. So many of these like particular things had never been done before. If you watched what was it, Fear and Desire? No, not was it Fear and Desire? One of those Killer's Kiss, the early Kubrick film stuff, and you see the camera on the track that just like goes through the rooms or whatever, you'd say no big deal. Like, if you just watch that now, you'd be like, what's the big deal? It hadn't been done ever before.
I get it, but
so many things in Citizen Kane that had never been done. So,
but you could make the same argument about like cucumber jello. Like, yeah, for a certain moment in time, that was all the rage, no matter what dinner party you went to. But collectively, the world had advanced beyond that. But I'm sure that we wouldn't have some of the culinary delights we have today without I guess Twinkies couldn't run unless like cucumber jello walked. But it's kind of the same thing when it comes to cinema. You've got these weird dishes that at the time they were all the rage, and you watch it now and you're like, I don't see what anyone gets in that. Seventh Victim is like that.
The same tools are used today verbatim, though. That's the thing. There's examples of that. That's why I use the track as an example, like to have a camera pan through multiple spaces like that, But like in Citizen Kane, he has that floor shot where the guy is walking and he's like literally like on the floor. Why? Because they said you could. Orson, we can't get that shot. It's not possible. He runs in the other room, grabs a jackhammer, comes back, breaks apart the concrete or whatever, the linoleum, whatever, to dig a freaking hole to put the tripod down in the hole so we can get that shot. Like, that's the thing. And now we take it for granted. We can get a low shot, whatever.
I'm all for taking things for granted. I'm a huge proponent of taking things for granted.
Fair enough. Okay, I can accept that.
My God. Well, I'm trying to pick which David flick to recommend to you if you haven't all gone to David's Twitter, MK Ultra.
Have you done Noah yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one's for Noah again?
Year Zero with 9 Inch Nails, Year Zero. And it's not just Noah and Transformers movie at the same time. Because there's like there's incredible parallels you'll notice between Noah and Transformers, because Transformers is super Kabbalistic, right? It's like Megatron, Metatron, the Allspark is basically that cube in space or whatever. But Exactly. Is it on Twitter? It just might. I think it might only be on the syncbook.com.
Could be
my
true.
page there. But yeah. So yeah, if you scroll down a little bit here, I go. Where are my most recent sync film? So if you see a film up there, is there a film that you just
I'll go back here.
Yeah. So not highlights, just on the page.
Okay.
Sorry. It shouldn't be too far down. I thought maybe I did post more than I realized. But there's the green door with is it that? I don't know whatever it is. I can't tell if we're going past it or not. Yeah, no, it's after that. It's recent. It's like 2 days ago, or was it yesterday? I think I just uploaded the green door with Marilyn Manson, Smells Like Children, because for years, like going back to high school, I always felt like that pairing should. It's like yesterday, dude. I don't know what we're looking at. But yeah, there it is. So don't jump into this. Don't play it. Trust me, it's a porno. So like,
thank you.
So so that's the thing I love about X, man, is I can totally post X-rated stuff on X. But so for years I tried to play Marilyn Manson, Smells Like Children with Lost Highway because of its synchronistic connection, because he did that. Songs from that album ended up in that movie. But then somebody goes by Denim on Twitter pointed out to me, don't show that.
I can't help myself. I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't do it. We'll get our video pulled. But it's Marilyn Chambers. But this guy made this connection between why he argued Marilyn Manson is in Lost Highway has to do with Behind the Green Door. And like, it's an incredibly strong argument. And so I was like, wow, that's freaking crazy. I wonder what happens if I play Smells Like Children with Behind the Green Door instead of Lost Highway. And sure enough, holy cow, it's incredible. So there he says, I believe Marilyn Manson's casting in Lost Highway is a nod to Marilyn Chambers in the adult film. He says Beyond the Green Door, this Behind the Green Door, produced by the Mitchell brothers, one of whom famously killed the other in the Bay Area, etc. But yeah, no.
So it's like a Rothschild's masked party.
Yes.
Movie. Okay.
It's like a Rothschild sex orgy party, and it's like, and it's all just one act. Like there's not like in most pornos, time goes by and they're here, then they're there or whatever, and this is all this one room. So it's just like, and people keep coming through this green door to participate, and so yeah, it's like it's loaded. Yeah, it's a good one.
Definitely recommend that one. Got a couple more. I'd say check out Pi with Massive Attack and Antichrist with Charlotte Gainsbourg IRM, and then also you need to like re-upload the Titanic with 90
I have to re-upload it. They took that down, and I think, and they told me that it was apparently because I used a 3D version of Titanic.
Really?
So like it's not. Yeah, they said it's just when I got the torrent, it said like 3D, and when I got the message from Twitter behind the scenes, like them saying, "Hey, you got a video taken down," it said as the title, it said Titanic 3D. I'm like, oh shoot. So, but yeah, that's a good one.
Why is that one the one that you're not allowed to play?
Good question, right?
It's the most realistic. I saw it in 3D, and on the anniversary of I was watching it, and they're writing down like, and that was the last night it's like August or June, was it June 12th, 1912, and this was like June 12th, 2012. It was 100 years to the day, and I had no idea. So like the fact that it was in 3D and on the anniversary, and whatever else was going on at that desert festival, I was convinced that we could probably save the Titanic this time. I was like, what if we don't run into the ice cube? We'll probably be okay. I don't know. But yeah,
right.
Oasis, Ready Player One, Lion King with Childish Gambino, Lion King with Danny Glover's Awaken My Love, and
which is also Childish Gambino, same guy.
Yeah, and then
so
Peanut, Leonard Cohen. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just that's the both Lion Kings. That's like the remake of the Lion King and the original Lion King. So yeah, it does a thing.
Pretty base. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, basically, love you guys, and see you all next time. Thank you for being here.